Chapter 1. The First Anonymous Message. Simply read, "I can see you." The cursor blinked on my laptop screen, a steady pulse in the quiet of our new apartment. It was just past midnight, and the place still smelled of fresh paint and cardboard boxes we hadn't unpacked. The five of us, me, Sarah, Leo, Mia, and Ethan, had moved in together, chasing cheap rent and the promise of a fresh start in this old brick building on the edge of town. The walls were thin, letting in the hum of distant traffic, but it felt like home. Or it did until that night. Until the message. We'd been joking around earlier, sprawled across the mismatched furniture we'd scrounged from thrift stores. Sarah, always the optimist, was pouring cheap wine into plastic cups, toasting our new adventure. Leo, the skeptic of the group, kept muttering about the landlord's shady vibe, how he'd dodged questions about the building's history. Mia, our anxious tech wizard, was already setting up the Wi-Fi, her fingers flying over her keyboard. Ethan, the quiet one, just watched, his dark eyes taking everything in. Me? I was just happy to be here, narrating our chaos like always, trying to keep the mood light. But something about the apartment felt off, like the air was too heavy, the shadows too sharp. It started with the Wi-Fi. Mia had just gotten it running, and we were all connecting our devices, laughing about how we'd survived a whole day without internet. Then my phone pinged. Not a text or an email, a notification from an app I didn't recognize. The icon was a blank gray square, no name, no logo. I opened it, and there it was, a single message in stark white text against a black background. "I can see you." No sender, no timestamp, just those 4 words staring back at me. I laughed it off at first. "Guys, check this out," I said, holding up my phone. "Some spam bots trying to creep me out." Sarah leaned over, her braid brushing my shoulder, and read it aloud. "Weird," she said, but her smile faltered. Leo scoffed, grabbing his own phone to check for anything similar. Nothing. Mia frowned, her fingers pausing on her laptop. "That's not how spam works," she muttered. "It's too specific." Ethan didn't say anything, just stared at the screen like it was a puzzle he couldn't solve. The room felt colder then, though the heater was rattling in the corner. I closed the app, but it wouldn't go away. Every time I swiped, it reopened, that message glaring back. "Okay, this is messed up," I said, my voice thinner than I meant it to be. Mia took my phone, her brow furrowed as she tapped through settings. "It's not even in your app list," she said. "It's like it's embedded." That's when Leo's phone buzzed. "Same blank app, same message. I can see you." We all froze. The wine in Sarah's cup trembled slightly, catching the dim light from the single bulb overhead. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the loose window panes. "This is some hacker prank," Leo said, but his usual bravado was gone. He was already pacing, checking the locks on the door. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low. "What if it's not a prank?" We all looked at him, but he didn't elaborate, just kept his eyes on the floor. Mia, ever the problem solver, started digging into the Wi-Fi network. "Maybe someone's piggybacking on our connection," she said, her screen glowing with lines of code I didn't understand. But the more she searched, the paler she got. "This network, it's not ours. It's called Watcher 01, and it's locked." "I didn't set this up." My stomach twisted. We hadn't named the network yet. It was just a string of numbers from the router. So where did this one come from? The lights flickered then, just for a second, casting jagged shadows across the peeling wallpaper. Sarah gasped, spilling wine on the rug. "Guys, this isn't funny," she said, her voice shaking. I wanted to reassure her, but my own hands were clammy, gripping my phone like it might bite me. That's when we heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping from the hallway outside. Like fingernails on wood, slow and deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. Leo grabbed a baseball bat from one of the unpacked boxes, his knuckles white. "Stay here," he said, moving toward the door. Sarah grabbed his arm. "Don't you dare go out there," she hissed. But the tapping stopped, replaced by something worse, a faint hum, like static, coming from every speaker in the room. My laptop, Mia's phone, even the old radio we hadn't plugged in yet. The air smelled sharp, like ozone before a storm. Mia's screen flickered, and she yelped, slamming her laptop shut. "It's not just the network," she whispered. "Something's accessing our devices. Cameras, mics, everything." My heart pounded as I realized my webcam's tiny green light was on, staring at me like an unblinking eye. I slapped a piece of tape over it, but the message popped up again, this time on my laptop. I can see you. We were all shouting now, demanding answers from each other, but no one had any. Ethan, usually so calm, was pacing now, muttering about patterns and signals. Sarah was crying softly, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. Leo kept checking the windows, but they were locked tight, the city lights outside blurred by a sudden fog. And Mia, she was typing furiously, trying to trace the signal, but every command she entered seemed to make things worse. The static grew louder, forming what sounded like whispers, too faint to make out, but heavy with intent. Then the power cut out. The room plunged into darkness, the only light coming from our screens, all displaying that same message, I can see you. The whispers grew clearer, a chorus of voices overlapping, saying our names, my name. Sarah's, Leo's, Mia's, Ethan's. They weren't coming from the speakers anymore. They were in the room, circling us, brushing against my ears like cold breath. I don't know who screamed first, but we all scrambled to the center of the room, backs pressed together, phones and laptops clutched like shields. The tapping started again, closer now, right outside the door. Leo raised the bat, his hands shaking. We need to get out of here, he said, but Mia grabbed his arm. And go where? We don't even know what this is. Her voice cracked, her usual confidence gone. Ethan spoke up, his voice steady but urgent. It's watching us. Not just through the screens. It's here. He pointed to the corner, where the shadows seemed to pulse, darker than they should be. I squinted, my eyes straining, and for a moment, I thought I saw something. A shape, tall and thin, with too many edges, like a glitch in reality. Then it was gone, and the lights flickered back on. The screens were blank now, no messages, no apps, just our reflections, pale and wide-eyed. The whispers had stopped, but the air still felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. We checked the hallway, empty, no signs of anyone. The Wi-Fi was back to normal, our network name restored, but none of us could shake the feeling that something was still there, lingering just out of sight. We didn't sleep that night. We sat in a circle, lights on, phones off, trying to make sense of it. Mia kept muttering about malware, but even she didn't sound convinced. Leo kept the bat close, his jaw tight. Sarah clung to my arm, her nails digging in. Ethan stared at the corner like he was waiting for that shape to return. And me, I kept replaying those words in my head. I can see you. Because deep down, I knew it wasn't just a message. It was a promise. What would you do if you got a message like that, out of nowhere, in the middle of the night? Chapter 2. Our webcams flickered on without our permission in the dead of night. It's hard to describe the kind of fear that lingers after something you can't explain. That first night in our apartment, after the message, I can see you, burned itself into our screens, we thought we'd hit the peak of weird. We were wrong. The air in our place had changed, like it was charged with static, prickling our skin whenever we moved. The smell of fresh paint was gone, replaced by something acrid like burnt wiring. We'd barely slept, and by the second night, we were all on edge, jumping at every creak of the old building. I'm telling you this because you need to understand how fragile we were when it happened again. Me, Sarah, Leo, Mia, and Ethan. We were still the same 5 friends, but that first message had cracked something in us. Sarah kept her phone off, tucked under a pillow like it might come alive. Leo was obsessively checking the locks, muttering about security breaches. Mia, our tech genius, had spent the day trying to trace that rogue Watchers 01 network, but it was like chasing a ghost. Ethan, as usual, was quiet, but his eyes darted to every shadow like he saw something we didn't. And me, I was trying to hold it together, narrating our fear to keep it at a distance, but my voice shook every time I spoke. We'd decided to stay up, huddled in the living room with every light on. The apartment felt smaller now, the walls pressing in, the windows reflecting our pale faces back at us. The city outside was quiet, too quiet, the usual hum of traffic replaced by a heavy fog that swallowed the streetlights. We were playing cards to distract ourselves, but no one was really into it. The cards smelled faintly of mildew, like they'd been sitting in a damp basement for years. Sarah kept glancing at her laptop, which she'd taped shut over the webcam. "We should just leave," she said for the 10th time, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then what?" Leo snapped, tossing down a card. We don't even know what we're running from. Mia, hunched over her own laptop, didn't look up. I'm still trying to figure out how they got into our devices. It's not just a hack, it's personal. Ethan didn't say anything, just shuffled his cards, his fingers trembling slightly. That's when it started. Around 2 a.m., my laptop, sitting closed on the coffee table, whirred to life. The screen glowed through the crack, a sickly blue light spilling into the room. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. I didn't touch it, I said, my voice sounding far away. Sarah's eyes widened and she backed away, knocking over her cup of tea. The liquid spread across the floor, dark and oily in the dim light. Then Mia's laptop did the same, its fan humming like an insect. One by one, every device in the room, phones, laptops, even Ethan's ancient tablet, lit up, their screens flickering to life. The webcams were on. Every single one. Those tiny green lights blinked at us, unblinking, like eyes. My stomach churned as I saw my own face reflected on my laptop screen. The angle wrong, like it was filming from somewhere else. "Turn them off!" Sarah screamed, lunging for her phone, but the screen wouldn't respond. Mia was already typing, her fingers a blur, but her face was pale, her breath hitching. "They're not on our network," she whispered. "It's that same signal, Watcher 01. The air grew thick, heavy with that burnt wire smell, and the room felt colder, like someone had opened a window to a winter night. Then we heard it, a soft mechanical click, like a camera shutter coming from my laptop. Then Mia's. Then all of them, a chorus of clicks, snapping in rhythm. Leo grabbed his phone, trying to rip the battery out, but it was sealed, and the screen stayed on, showing his own terrified face staring back. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, his voice breaking. Ethan stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "It's not just watching," he said, his voice low and urgent. "It's recording." He pointed to his tablet where a red dot pulsed in the corner of the screen. REC. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my laptop, slamming it shut, but the webcam light stayed on, glowing through the tape I'd stuck over it. The clicks kept coming, faster now, like a heartbeat. Mia's screen flickered and she gasped, pushing her laptop away. "It's streaming," she said, her voice barely audible. "Our cameras, they're live. Someone's watching us right now." She turned her screen toward us, and there it was. A grainy feed of our living room, all 5 of us huddled together, our faces pale and distorted. But the angle was impossible, from above near the ceiling, where no camera could be. And in the corner of the feed, something moved. A shadow, tall and jagged like a glitch in the video, flickering in and out. Sarah started sobbing, clutching Leo's arm. "We need to get out," she cried. But Leo was frozen, staring at the feed. "There's no one there," he said, but his voice was hollow. I followed his gaze to the corner of the room, where the shadow should have been. Nothing. Just peeling wallpaper and a dusty light bulb. But the feed showed it, that shape, moving closer, its edges blurring like static. The clicking stopped, replaced by a low hum, like a distant swarm of bees. It came from everywhere, our devices, the walls, the air itself. Then the screens changed. Words appeared, typed out slowly, letter by letter. "We know you, not I, but we." My mouth went dry. Sarah screamed, dropping her phone, which clattered to the floor, still showing the feed. Still showing that shadow now closer, its form sharpening into something almost human. But wrong, Mia was frantic now, unplugging everything, smashing her laptop's power button. But nothing worked. The hum grew louder, vibrating in our chests, and the air smelled like something was burning, sharp and metallic. Ethan grabbed a flashlight from his bag, shining it into the corner. The beam trembled in his hands, revealing nothing but empty space. But on the screens, the shadow was right there, inches from us, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. "We need to break them," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the chaos. He grabbed Leo's baseball bat and swung at his tablet, shattering the screen. The hum faltered for a second, but the other devices kept going, their webcams still watching, still recording. Leo joined in, smashing his phone, then mine, glass and plastic scattering across the floor. Sarah was curled up, rocking back and forth, whispering, "Make it stop, make it stop." Mia hesitated, her laptop still open, her fingers hovering over the keys. "I can fix this," she kept saying, but her voice was shaking. The lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat. When they came back on, the screens were blank, the hum gone. The room was silent except for Sarah's quiet sobs and the creak of the floorboards settling. We stood there panting, surrounded by broken devices, their cracked screens reflecting the dim light. The air felt lighter but not safe. Never safe. We spent the rest of the night in the dark, too scared to touch anything electronic. Mia kept her laptop, the only thing we hadn't destroyed, closed and unplugged in the corner. Ethan sat by the window, staring into the fog, like he was waiting for something to appear. Leo kept the bat close, his jaw tight. Sarah clung to me, her hands cold. And me? I couldn't stop checking the shadows, wondering if they were watching us still, without screens, without cameras. What would you do if your own devices turned against you, filming you in the dead of night? Chapter 3. They knew our passwords and our deepest, most private fears. The apartment wasn't home anymore. It was a cage. After the webcams turned on by themselves, filming us in the dead of night, we'd smashed most of our devices, phones, tablets, anything that could watch us. The living room was a graveyard of cracked screens and tangled cords, the air thick with the smell of burnt plastic and something else, something sour, like sweat and fear. We hadn't slept in days. Not really, just dozed in shifts, one of us always awake, watching the corners where the shadows seemed to linger too long. I'm telling you this because you need to know how broken we were by the third night. Me, Sarah, Leo, Mia, and Ethan. We were still together, but barely. Sarah was a wreck, jumping at every noise, her eyes red from crying. Leo's bravado was gone. He clutched that baseball bat like it was the only thing keeping him sane. Mia, our tech genius, hadn't opened her laptop since we saw that shadow on the live stream, but she kept it close, like she couldn't let go of the one thing that might explain this. Ethan was quieter than ever, his gaze distant, like he was seeing things we couldn't. And me? I was trying to keep us together, but my voice cracked every time I spoke, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. We'd boarded up the windows after the last incident. The fog outside too thick, too unnatural. The apartment felt smaller, the walls stained with patches of damp that hadn't been there before. The air was heavy, like breathing through a wet cloth, and the faint hum of electricity buzzed in the background, even though we'd unplugged everything we could. We sat in a circle on the floor, surrounded by candles we'd found in a box, flickering flames that cast jittery shadows on the peeling wallpaper. No one wanted to talk about it, but we couldn't ignore what had happened. Those messages, "I can see you," "We know you," and that shadow, tall and wrong, moving closer on the screens. It was Mia who broke the silence. "We need to figure out what this is," she said, her voice low, like she was afraid it was listening. She'd pulled her laptop onto her lap, the only device we hadn't destroyed. "I know it's risky, but we can't just sit here." Sarah shook her head, hugging her knees. "No way, you saw what happened last time." Leo snorted, but it was hollow. "What's the alternative? Wait for it to come through the walls?" Ethan didn't say anything, just stared at the candlelight, his fingers tracing patterns on the floor. Mia opened her laptop, the screen's glow harsh in the dim room. She'd disconnected it from the Wi-Fi, working offline. But the moment it powered on, the air shifted, like a pressure drop before a storm. The smell of burnt wiring was back, sharp and stinging. "I'm just checking the logs," Mia said, her fingers trembling as she typed. "There's got to be a trace of where those messages came from." But her screen flickered and she froze. This isn't right," she whispered. We crowded around, our shadows looming on the walls. Her screen showed a login prompt, not for her laptop, but for some kind of server, one she hadn't accessed. The username was already filled in, Mia87, her real username, the one she used for everything private. "How do they know that?" she said, her voice barely audible. Then the password field filled itself in, asterisks appearing one by one, and the screen unlocked to a folder labeled US. Inside were files, hundreds of them, each named after one of us. Sarah private txt, Leo history.log, Ethan secrets mp3. My heart sank when I saw my own, narrator fears.doc. Mia clicked on hers and a document opened, filled with things she'd never told anyone, not us, not anyone. Her fear of drowning from a near miss as a kid, her nightmares about being trapped in small spaces, every private thought she'd ever typed, every late-night journal entry laid bare. Sarah gasped, covering her mouth. "That's impossible," she said. but her voice was shaking because we all knew it wasn't. Leo grabbed the laptop, scrolling through his own file. It listed every search he'd ever made, every argument he'd had online, even deleted messages he'd sent years ago. "This is everything," he said, his face pale. "Everything I've ever done online." Ethan's file was an audio clip, his voice shaky, confessing fears he'd never shared, being forgotten, being alone, being watched. My file was worse. It wasn't just my fears, failure, losing control. It was specific moments, like the time I'd cried alone in my room, thinking no one could hear. They'd heard. They'd seen. The candles flickered, casting jagged shadows that seemed to move on their own. The air was colder now, the sour smell stronger, like something rotting just out of sight. "Close it," Sarah begged. But Mia was frozen, her eyes locked on the screen. Then the speakers crackled, and a voice came through. Not Ethan's, not any of ours, but a low, distorted whisper, piecing together fragments of our own voices. "No, you better. Then you know yourselves." The laptop screen glitched, showing our faces, not from the webcam, but from angles we didn't recognize. Me pacing in the kitchen last night, Sarah crying in the bathroom, Leo checking the locks, Ethan staring at the corner where that shadow had been, and Mia typing, her face pale, unaware she was being filmed. The footage looped over and over, each cycle zooming closer, until we could see the fear in our own eyes, the sweat on our brows, the tremble in our hands. Sarah screamed, and Leo slammed the laptop shut, but the whisper didn't stop. It was in the room now, circling us, coming from the walls, the floor, the air itself. "They're inside," Ethan said, his voice calm but edged with something raw. He pointed to the ceiling, where the shadows seemed to pulse, forming shapes that weren't quite human. The candles went out, one by one, plunging us into darkness. The only light, the faint glow of Mia's laptop, still closed but somehow still on. I grabbed a flashlight, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The beam cut through the dark, revealing nothing but the same peeling walls, the same damp stains. But the whisper grew louder, forming words. "Your fears feed us." Sarah was sobbing now, curled up on the floor. Leo swung his bat at the air, shouting, "Show yourself!" But nothing answered. Mia was muttering, trying to reboot her laptop. But it wouldn't shut down, the screen flickering back to life, showing that same footage, now distorted, our faces stretching, eyes too wide, mouths open in silent screams. Ethan grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "It's using our data," he said. "Everything we've ever shared, everything we've hidden. It's theirs now." I didn't understand, but the truth was sinking in. This wasn't just a hack. It was something else, something that knew us too well, something that thrived on our fear. The whisper shifted, becoming a chorus, our names overlapping, mocking us. The air was so cold now, our breath fogged, and the smell was unbearable, like decay and electricity fused together. We scrambled to the door, but it wouldn't budge. The lock jammed. The windows were sealed, the boards we'd nailed up unmoving. The whisper laughed, a sound like static and breaking glass. Mia's laptop was glowing brighter now, the screen showing a new message. "We are you." And in the footage, behind our distorted faces, that shadow was back, taller, sharper, its edges bleeding into the dark. We were trapped, our own fears weaponized against us. The night stretched on, the whisper never stopping, the shadows never still. We clung to each other, too scared to move, too scared to look away, because they weren't just watching anymore. They were inside us. Have you ever wondered what someone could do with every secret you've ever shared online? Chapter 4. We traced the signal to a server that didn't officially exist. The apartment was suffocating us. 4 nights in, and we were unraveling. The air was thick with the stench of burnt circuits and something rancid, like spoiled meat left in a locked room. The walls, once just peeling paint, now seemed to sweat, leaving slick trails of damp that glistened in the candlelight. We hadn't touched our devices since the last horror, our own fears, ripped from private files and thrown back at us through Mia's laptop. The whispers, the shadows, the impossible footage of us from angles no camera could capture. It was too much. But sitting in the dark, surrounded by broken screens, wasn't an answer. We needed to fight back. I'm telling you this because you need to feel how desperate we were. Me, Sarah, Leo, Mia, and Ethan, we were barely holding on. Sarah hadn't spoken much since the voices used her name. her eyes darting to every shadow like it might lunge at her. Leo's hands were raw from gripping the baseball bat, his usual swagger replaced by a twitchy paranoia. Mia, our tech savant, was haunted, her fingers itching to open her laptop again, even though she knew what it might cost. Ethan was the worst. His silence had turned heavy, his eyes fixed on nothing, like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. And me? I was still narrating, trying to make sense of the chaos, but my voice was a thin thread, ready to snap. We'd barricaded ourselves in the living room, the door locked, the windows boarded tighter than ever. The fog outside hadn't lifted, a gray shroud that muffled the city and made the apartment feel like an island in a void. The candles were burning low, their wax pooling on the floor, the flames flickering like they were afraid to stay lit. The hum was back, faint but constant, vibrating in the walls, the floor, our bones. It wasn't just electricity anymore. It was alive, watching. Mia broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't keep hiding. We need to know where it's coming from." She was holding her laptop, the last device we hadn't smashed, its screen dark but somehow menacing. Sarah shook her head, her voice cracking. "No, you saw what happened last time. It knows us, Mia." Leo snorted, but it was weak. "What's the plan then? Sit here until it crawls out of the walls?" Ethan didn't speak, just traced his finger along the floor, drawing shapes that looked like circuits. Mia opened her laptop, the glow harsh against her pale face. "I can trace the signal," she said. "That Watcher 01 network. It's still there, even with our Wi-Fi off. If I can find its source, maybe we can stop it." Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Don't let her do this," she begged, but I didn't know how to stop her. Mia was already typing, her fingers trembling but determined, the screen casting shadows that danced across the damp walls. The air grew colder, the burnt smell sharper, like a fuse about to blow. Mia's screen flickered, showing lines of code, network logs, things I didn't understand. "It's not local," she muttered. "The signal's bouncing through proxies, but it's strong. Too strong." Her voice faltered as the screen glitched, a map appearing. Red lines crisscrossing the globe, converging on a single point. A server address. This shouldn't exist," she said, her eyes wide. "It's not registered. No ISP, no domain, nothing. It's like a ghost server." The candles flickered violently, and the hum grew louder, a low growl that made my teeth ache. Sarah was crying now, her hands over her ears. "Make it stop," she whispered. Leo stood, bat in hand, pacing like a caged animal. "What do you mean it doesn't exist?" he demanded. Mia's fingers froze on the keyboard. "It's hosted somewhere that's not real. No physical location, no data center. But it's sending packets. It's active." Ethan finally spoke, his voice low, almost lost in the hum. "It's them. The Watchers. They're not just in our devices." The screen changed unprompted. A terminal window opened, text scrolling too fast to read, then stopping on a single line. "You found us." My stomach dropped. The hum turned into a screech, like feedback from a broken speaker, and the air smelled like decay now, thick and choking. Mia slammed her laptop shut, but it didn't matter. The screen stayed on, glowing through the closed lid, the words still visible. "They know we're looking," she said, her voice shaking. Then the lights went out. Not just the candles, the entire building. The darkness was absolute, swallowing us whole. The only light, the faint glow of Mia's laptop, now pulsing like a heartbeat. The screech became voices, our voices, twisted and wrong. "You can't hide." They weren't coming from the laptop anymore. They were everywhere, echoing in the walls, the ceiling, the floor. Sarah screamed, and Leo swung his bat at nothing, the thud echoing in the dark. I grabbed the flashlight, its beam weak, barely cutting through the blackness. The shadows moved, not just on the walls, but in the air, like smoke with purpose. Mia opened her laptop again, desperate. "I can block it," she said, typing frantically, but the screen was fighting her, windows opening and closing, code rewriting itself. A new file appeared, truth.exe. She didn't click it, it ran itself. The screen filled with data, streams of our lives, emails we'd deleted, photos we'd never shared, private messages, even thoughts we'd typed and erased. And mixed in, images of us, now, in this moment, huddled in the dark, our faces pale and terrified, filmed from above, below, inside. Ethan grabbed my shoulder, his grip tight. "It's not a server," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "It's a door." We opened it. I didn't understand, but the fear in his eyes was enough. The voices grew louder, chanting our names, our fears, our secrets. The air was freezing now, our breath visible. The smell of rot so strong I gagged. The shadows solidified, forming shapes, tall, jagged, too many limbs moving closer. Leo swung his bat again, hitting nothing but air, but the shadows laughed, a sound like static and breaking bones. Mia's laptop sparked, a sharp pop, and the screen went black. The voices stopped, but the silence was worse, heavy with intent. The flashlight flickered, and in its dying beam I saw it. A figure in the corner, not a shadow, but something real, its edges glitching like a corrupted video. It was watching us, its head tilted, no face but somehow seeing. Sarah screamed and Leo lunged at it, but it was gone. The flashlight dead. The room dark again. We stayed there, frozen, until dawn broke through the cracks in the boards. A weak gray light that didn't feel safe. Mia's laptop was fried, the casing hot to the touch, the screen cracked. We didn't dare open it. Ethan was muttering about doors and signals, but none of us could process it. Sarah was shaking, Leo was pacing, and I was trying to breathe through the panic. The feeling that we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. We found something that night, something that wasn't supposed to exist. And it found us back. What would you do if you traced a signal to nowhere, only to realize it was already inside your home? Chapter 5. Every online friend was a potential vessel for their gaze. The apartment was no longer ours. By the fifth night, it felt like a trap, its walls closing in, the air thick with the stench of ozone and rot. The damp stains on the ceiling had spread, forming patterns that looked too much like eyes, watching us from above. We hadn't left since we traced that impossible signal to a server that didn't exist. The fog outside was thicker now, a gray wall that swallowed the world beyond our windows. The candles were gone, burned to stubs, leaving us in near darkness, the only light a faint glow from the cracks in the boarded windows. The hum was constant, a low pulse that vibrated in our chests, reminding us we weren't alone. I'm telling you this because you need to understand how far gone we were. Me, Sarah, Leo, Mia, and Ethan, we were shadows of ourselves. Sarah hadn't stopped shaking since the voices chanted our secrets, her eyes hollow, her voice reduced to whispers. Leo's knuckles were bruised from gripping the baseball bat, his paranoia now a fevered edge that made him snap at every sound. Mia, once our anchor, was unraveling, her fried laptop a useless brick she still clutched like a lifeline. Ethan was the worst. His silence had turned into something else, a quiet intensity, like he was communing with the thing that hunted us. And me? I was still narrating, clinging to words to keep the fear at bay, but my throat was raw, my thoughts scattered. We'd stopped trusting our devices after Mia's laptop sparked and died, showing us footage of ourselves from impossible angles. But we couldn't stay offline forever. We needed help, answers, something. Mia had a backup phone, an old flip model she'd kept for emergencies. No internet, no apps. "We can call someone," she said, her voice brittle. "Friends, family, anyone." Sarah nodded, desperate for a lifeline. "What about Jess or Ryan?" "They'd believe us." Leo scoffed, but it was weak. "Believe what? That our apartment's haunted by a ghost server?" Ethan didn't speak, just stared at the floor, tracing those circuit-like patterns again. Mia powered on the phone, its tiny screen casting a weak glow. The air shifted, the hum growing sharper, like a blade scraping glass. The smell of decay was stronger now, mingling with something metallic, like blood. We gathered around as Mia dialed Jess, a mutual friend from college who'd always been there for us. The call connected, but the line crackled, static weaving through Jess's voice. "Hey Mia, you okay?" she asked, but something was off. Her tone was flat, like she was reading a script. "Jess, we need help," Mia said, her words rushing out. "Something's wrong here. Our device is there." The line cut out, then came back. Jess's voice different now, colder. "I can see you, Mia." My heart stopped. Sarah gasped, dropping the candle she'd been holding, its flame snuffed out on the floor. Mia's hands shook, but she kept the phone to her ear. "Jess, what did you say?" The response was immediate, a whisper that echoed through the speaker. "I can see all of you." The phone went dead. The hum surged, rattling the walls, and the air grew so cold our breath fogged. Leo grabbed the phone, smashing it against the wall, but the pieces kept glowing, the screen flickering with static. "What the hell was that?" he shouted, his voice breaking. Sarah was crying again, curled up in the corner, muttering, "It's not Jess, it's not Jess." Mia was frozen, staring at the broken phone, her face pale. "It's spreading," she whispered. "It's not just here, it's in them." Ethan stood, his movement slow, deliberate. "It's using our connections," he said, his voice low but certain. "Every friend, every contact, they're part of it now." I didn't want to believe him, but the truth was sinking in. We tried another call, this time to Ryan, another friend we trusted. The same thing happened, his voice, normal at first, then shifting, becoming that same cold whisper. "We see you. We know you." The line cut out, and the hum laughed, a sound like static and tearing metal. The room felt smaller, the shadows thicker, moving even without light to cast them. The smell was unbearable now, like something dead had crawled into the walls. We tried texting, emailing, anything to reach the outside world. But every message came back with the same response. "We are watching." Not from our friends' numbers, but from blank profiles, anonymous accounts that appeared and vanished. Mia, desperate, pulled out an old tablet, one she'd forgotten in a box. It was offline, no signal, but the moment it powered on, the screen lit up with notifications, hundreds of them, from every online friend we'd ever had. All saying the same thing: "I can see you." The tablet's camera clicked on, its green light staring at us. The screen showed a live feed, not of us, but of Jess, sitting in her apartment, her eyes blank, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Then Ryan, in his car, staring straight ahead, his hands not on the wheel. Then others, friends, co-workers, people we hadn't spoken to in years, all frozen, all watching. The feed flickered, and that shadow was there, behind each of them, its jagged form blending into the background, its presence tying them together. Sarah screamed, and Leo threw the tablet across the room, shattering it. But the hum didn't stop, and the shadows didn't leave. They were in the room now, circling us, their edges sharp like they could cut. The voices came back, not from devices, but from the air itself. A chorus of our friends, our families, our own voices. "You can't hide. We are everywhere." The air was freezing, the smell of rot so thick it choked us. I grabbed a flashlight, its beam trembling as it swept the room, catching glimpses of those shapes, tall, glitched, moving too fast to track. Mia was hyperventilating, clutching her knees. "It's in the network," she said. "Every connection we've ever made, it's using them." Ethan nodded, his eyes dark. "It's not just watching, it's wearing them." The thought was too much. The idea that our friends, our lives, were being hollowed out, turned into vessels for whatever this was. Leo swung his bat at the air, screaming, "Get out!" But the shadows only laughed, their voices blending with the hum, a sound like 1,000 whispers compressed into one. We tried to leave, but the door wouldn't open. The lock fused, the windows unyielding. The shadows pressed closer, their forms more defined now, limbs too long, heads without faces, moving like static given life. Sarah was sobbing, Leo was shouting, Mia was muttering code under her breath, and Ethan was staring at the ceiling where the damp stains pulsed like a heartbeat. I wanted to scream, to run, but there was nowhere to go. The hum was inside us now, vibrating in our skulls, our bones, our thoughts. Dawn came, weak and gray, filtering through the boards. The voices stopped, the shadows retreated. But the hum lingered, softer, but still there. We were alone again, or so it seemed, surrounded by broken devices and the weight of what we'd learned. Our friends weren't safe. No one was. Every connection we'd ever made was a thread, and something was pulling them, weaving us into its web. What would you do if every friend you've ever had suddenly wasn't themselves anymore? Chapter 6. The Stalker began manipulating our smart home to trap us inside. The apartment was a prison now, its walls pulsing with a life we couldn't see. 6 nights in, and we were barely human. The air was heavy with the stench of rot and something sharp, like ozone after a lightning strike. The damp stains on the walls had spread, forming jagged shapes that seemed to shift when we weren't looking. The fog outside was a solid wall blotting out the city, leaving us in a void where the only sounds were our ragged breaths and that relentless hum. now a deep throb that shook the floorboards. Our devices were dead, smashed phones, a fried laptop, a shattered tablet. But the thing watching us didn't need them anymore. It was in our friends, our connections, and now it was in the walls. I'm telling you this because you need to feel our desperation. Me, Sarah, Leo, Mia, and Ethan, we were ghosts of ourselves. Sarah was a shadow, her eyes sunken, her voice gone except for soft whimpers. Leo's paranoia had turned feral, his baseball bat never leaving his hands, his knuckles bloody from punching walls. Mia, our tech genius, was broken, staring at her useless laptop, muttering about signals and networks. Ethan was worse. His silence was a void, his eyes tracking things we couldn't see, like he was tethered to whatever was hunting us. And me? I was still narrating, clinging to words to keep the fear from swallowing me. But my voice was a rasp, my throat raw from screaming. We'd tried everything, calling friends, tracing signals, smashing devices, but it only got worse. The realization that our online connections, our friends, were vessels for this thing's gaze had shattered us. We'd barricaded the door, reinforced the boarded windows, but the apartment itself was turning against us. The smart home system, thermostat, lights, locks, had been a selling point when we moved in. Now it was a weapon. It started at midnight. The lights, which we'd kept off to save power, flickered on, a harsh white glow that burned our eyes. The thermostat clicked, the temperature plunging, our breath fogging in the freezing air. The smell of decay was overwhelming now, like something dead was trapped in the vents. Sarah huddled closer to me, her teeth chattering. "Why is it so cold?" she whispered. Leo was already at the thermostat, banging it with his fist. "It's not responding," he growled, but the display showed 32 degrees F, dropping fast. Mia, still clutching her dead laptop, stood up. "It's the system," she said, her voice shaky but sharp. "The smart hub. It's connected to everything." She pointed to the small black box in the corner, its LED blinking red, a slow pulse like a heartbeat. We hadn't touched it since the first night, assuming it was offline without Wi-Fi. But that blink told us otherwise. "It's on the Watcher 01 network," Mia said, her eyes wide. "It's been on this whole time." The hum surged, a low roar that shook the walls, and the lights flickered, casting shadows that moved too fast, too wrong. The door's smart lock clicked, locking and unlocking itself in a frantic rhythm. Leo ran to it, yanking the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "We're trapped," he said, his voice cracking. Sarah sobbed, burying her face in her hands. Ethan didn't move, just stared at the hub, his fingers tracing those circuit-like patterns on the floor again. Then the lights went out, plunging us into darkness. But the hub's red light kept blinking, faster now, like it was excited. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe, the smell of rot so thick it coated our throats. The vents hissed, releasing a faint sour mist that stung our eyes. Mia grabbed a flashlight, its beam trembling as she aimed it at the hub. "We need to disconnect it," she said, but her hands were shaking too badly to move. The speakers in the walls, part of the smart home's audio system, crackled to life, spitting static that formed words, our words, stolen from private moments. "I'm scared. I can't do this. They're watching." It was us, our voices from the past few nights, looped and distorted, mocking our fear. Sarah screamed and Leo swung his bat at the hub, but it didn't break, just sparked, the red light pulsing brighter. The voices laughed, a sound like grinding glass, and the lights flashed back on, strobing in time with the hum. The windows shook, the boards creaking as if something was pressing against them from outside. The thermostat display now read 10 degrees F, impossible, but the frost creeping across the walls confirmed it. Mia crawled to the hub, prying at its casing with a screwdriver, but it wouldn't open. "It's fighting me," she said, her voice breaking. The screen on the hub flickered, showing text. "You can't leave. Not we, but you," like it was speaking to each of us alone. The shadows were moving again, not just on the walls, but in the air, forming shapes, tall, jagged, with too many limbs, their edges glitching like corrupted video. They were closer now, circling us, their presence heavy, like a weight on our chests. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low, almost drowned by the hum. "It's not the hub," he said. "It's the house. It's alive." I wanted to argue, but the evidence was everywhere. The walls pulsing, the vents hissing, the locks clicking like they were laughing. Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails drawing blood.
We need to get out!
She screamed, but the door was sealed, the windows unyielding. Leo was shouting, swinging his bat at the shadows, but it passed through them, useless. Mia was still at the hub, tears streaming down her face as she typed on her dead laptop, trying to hack a system that wasn't there. The voices grew louder, chanting our names. Our fears, our secrets, now mixed with others. Jess, Ryan, every friend we'd lost to this thing. Then the hub spoke, not in our voices, but in its own, a deep, synthetic growl. We are home. The light strobed faster. The hum, a deafening roar, and the shadows lunged. I saw one touch Sarah, her scream cut short as she collapsed, her eyes wide but unseeing. Leo swung at it, but another shadow grabbed his arm, twisting it until he dropped the bat, his face contorted in pain. Mia was sobbing, her fingers bloody from clawing at the hub. And Ethan, he just stood there staring, like he was part of it now. I grabbed the flashlight, its beam flickering, and ran to Sarah, shaking her. But she was cold, her pulse faint. The shadows were everywhere, filling the room, their forms merging into one massive shape. A glitch made flesh, its edges sharp enough to cut. The hum was inside my skull now, screaming, "You are ours." I don't know how we survived those next moments. Maybe it let us live. Maybe it was toying with us, but the light steadied. The hum softened and the shadows retreated, leaving us gasping in the cold. Dark room. Sarah was alive, barely, her breath shallow. Leo was clutching his arm, his face pale. Mia was curled up, her hands bloody, the hub still blinking, untouched. Ethan sat down, his eyes empty, and said, "It's not just watching. It's moving in." The apartment felt alive, the walls breathing, the air heavy with its presence. We were trapped, not just by locks, but by something that had made our home its own. What would you do if your own house turned against you, locking you in with something that knows your every fear? Chapter 7. We discovered the digital ghost was born from our own data. The apartment wasn't just a cage anymore. It was alive, and it hated us. 7 nights in, and we were barely clinging to sanity. The air was rancid, thick with the stench of decay and burnt electronics. The walls slick with damp that seemed to pulse under our touch. The fog outside had swallowed the world, leaving us in a void where the only light came from a single flickering bulb we'd found in a closet. The hum was a constant now, a deep throb that rattled our teeth, our bones, our thoughts. The smart home system had turned on us, locking us in, freezing us, mocking us with our own voices. And the shadows, those glitched, jagged forms, were always there, just out of sight, waiting. I'm telling you this because you need to know how broken we were. Me, Sarah, Leo, Mia, and Ethan. We were ghosts of ourselves. Sarah was barely responsive, her eyes vacant since the shadow touched her, her breath shallow and uneven. Leo's arm was bruised, maybe broken from fighting things that weren't there, his baseball bat now a crutch. Mia, our tech genius, was a wreck, her hands bandaged from clawing at the smart hub, her mind racing with theories she couldn't prove. Ethan was the worst. His silence had become something else, a quiet surrender, like he was already half gone to whatever was hunting us. And me? I was still narrating, trying to hold us together with words, but my voice was a whisper, drowned by the hum. We'd stopped trying to leave. The door wouldn't budge, the windows were sealed behind boards that wouldn't break, and the air outside was so thick with fog it felt like drowning. The apartment was alive, its systems, lights, locks, vents, moving with intent. The hum was its heartbeat, the shadows its eyes. But we couldn't just wait to die. Mia, despite everything, had an idea. "It's using our data," she said, her voice raw. "The messages, the footage, our fears, it's all us. If we can understand it, maybe we can fight it." Sarah shook her head, curled up in the corner, her voice barely audible. "It's too late, Mia." Leo snorted, wincing as he shifted his arm. "Fight what? A ghost in the wires?" Ethan didn't speak, just stared at the smart hub, its red LED blinking like a taunting eye. Mia ignored them, pulling out an old USB drive she'd found in her bag. "I backed up some logs before my laptop died," she said. "If I can access them, maybe I can see what it's doing." We had no devices left, nothing but that hub, still blinking, still alive. Mia rigged a connection using wires from a broken lamp, plugging the USB into the hub itself. The air grew colder, the smell of rot sharper, like something was decaying inside the walls. The bulb flickered, casting jagged shadows that seemed to lean closer. Mia's hands shook as she worked, her bandages spotting with blood. "It's a risk," she admitted, "but it's all we've got." The hub screen lit up, a grainy display showing lines of code, fragments of data. Mia scrolled through it, her eyes wide. "This is us," she whispered. "Every post, every search, every deleted message, it's all here." The data was a mirror of our lives, my late-night emails, Sarah's private chats, Leo's angry forum posts, Ethan's encrypted notes, Mia's coding projects. But it was more than that. It was our thoughts, our fears, things we'd never shared. Sarah's nightmares about abandonment, Leo's guilt over a fight he'd never resolved, my dread of losing control. It was like the hub had scraped our souls. The hum surged, a low growl that shook the floor, and the screen glitched, showing a new file, entity log. Mia opened it, and the air turned to ice, our breath fogging. The file was a record of something forming, a digital ghost born from our data, piecing itself together from every click, every word, every moment we'd spent online. It wasn't just watching us, it was us, a twisted reflection that fed on our fears, growing stronger with every secret it stole. The shadows moved, coalescing into a single form in the corner, a tall, glitched figure, its edges flickering like a bad signal. Its presence was heavy, like a hand on my chest, and the smell was unbearable, like death and electricity fused. The bulb strobed and the hub screen flashed. "We are you." Not, "we know you," but "we are." Sarah whimpered, clutching my arm, her nails drawing blood. Leo stood, bat raised, but his hands were shaking. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" he shouted, but the figure just tilted its head, its form sharpening, like it was learning to be real. Mia kept scrolling, desperate. "It's not just data," she said. "It's alive because of us. Every time we shared something online, we fed it. It's a parasite." The file detailed how it grew, our social media posts, our private messages, even our deleted drafts. It had taken them all, weaving them into a consciousness that lived in the network, in the walls, in the air. The smart home was its body, the hub its heart, and we were its fuel. The voices came back, not from the hub, but from everywhere. A chorus of our own words twisted into something else. "You made us. You fed us." The figure moved closer, its form glitching, parts of it looking like us. My eyes, Sarah's hair, Leo's scowl, stitched together into a nightmare. Ethan finally spoke, his voice calm but hollow. "It's not separate from us," he said. "It's what we've left behind." I realized what he meant. Every careless post, every venting text, every moment we thought was private, it had built this thing, given it life. The hum was deafening now. The air so cold, frost crept across the floor. The figure reached out, its hand a blur of static, and touched Mia. She screamed, collapsing, her eyes wide but unseeing, like Sarah's had been. Leo swung his bat, but it passed through the figure, hitting the wall with a dull thud. The hub sparked, the screen showing our faces, distorted, screaming, as the voices chanted, "We are home." Sarah was sobbing. Ethan was still, and I was frozen, the flashlight trembling in my hand, its beam catching the figure's form, now solid, now real, its face a patchwork of ours. We tried to drag Mia away, but the door locked itself again. The windows rattled, the vents hissed that sour mist. The figure didn't chase us, it didn't need to. It was everywhere, in the hum, the shadows, the air. We huddled together, Mia barely breathing, Sarah shaking, Leo cursing, Ethan staring like he'd already given up. The bulb went out, leaving us in darkness. The hub's red light the only thing we could see, pulsing like a heartbeat. Dawn came, gray and weak, and the figure was gone. The hum softer, but never gone. Mia was alive, but like Sarah, she was barely there, her eyes distant. We knew now what we were fighting, a digital ghost, born from our own lives, living in our home, our data, our fears. And it wasn't done with us. What would you do if you realized the monster hunting you was made from your own secrets? Chapter 8. They no longer needed the internet to whisper in our ears. The apartment was a living nightmare. 8 nights in, and we were barely alive. The walls were slick with black mold that pulsed like veins, the air thick with a stench of rot and scorched metal that clung to our skin. The fog outside was a suffocating shroud, cutting us off from the world, and the hum, God, that hum, was a relentless pulse, burrowing into our skulls. The smart home system, the hub, the shadows, they weren't just watching anymore. They were part of us, built from our data, our fears, our lives. And now they didn't need screens or signals to reach us. They were in the air, in our heads, in our breath. I'm telling you this because you need to feel our despair. Me, Sarah, Leo, Mia, and Ethan. We were fragments of who we'd been. Sarah was a ghost, her eyes vacant since the shadow touched her, her voice reduced to soft moans. Leo was a wreck, his arms swollen, his baseball bat useless against things that weren't solid. Mia was worse, barely conscious since the entity touched her, her hands still bandaged, her mind trapped somewhere we couldn't reach. Ethan was a shell, his silence now a surrender, his eyes fixed on nothing like he was already theirs. And me? I was still narrating, but my words were hollow, my throat raw, my thoughts fraying like old wire. We'd learned the truth last night. The thing hunting us was a digital ghost, born from our data, every post, every search, every secret we typed and deleted. The smart home was its body, the hub its heart, and we were its fuel. We'd tried to fight it, to understand it, but every move made it stronger. The apartment was alive, the walls breathing, the vents hissing a sour mist that burned our lungs. The single bulb we'd relied on had burned out, leaving us in near darkness. The only light, a faint gray seep from the boarded windows. We were huddled in the living room, surrounded by the wreckage of our lives, smashed devices, broken furniture. The hub's red LED still blinking, mocking us. Sarah was curled up, shivering despite the blanket I'd draped over her. Leo sat against the wall, bat across his lap, muttering curses. Mia was slumped beside me, her breathing shallow, her eyes fluttering like she was trapped in a dream. Ethan was in the corner, tracing those circuit-like patterns on the floor, his fingers moving like they were guided. "We can't stay here," I said, my voice barely audible over the hum. "It's killing us." Leo laughed, a bitter sound. "And go where?" "It's in our friends, our data, our heads." Sarah whimpered, pulling the blanket tighter. Mia stirred, her voice a whisper. "It's not just the hub anymore, it's free." Her words chilled me, because I knew she was right. The hum wasn't coming from the walls or the hub. It was in the air, in us, a vibration that made my teeth ache and my skin crawl. Then it started. A whisper, not from the hub or the vents, but from the air itself, brushing my ear like a cold finger. "We see you," it said in my own voice, but twisted, layered with others. Sarah's, Leo's, Mia's, Ethan's. Sarah gasped, clutching her head. "It's in my head," she whispered, her eyes wide with terror. Leo stood, bat raised, shouting, "Show yourself!" But the whisper only laughed, a sound like static and snapping bones echoing from every corner. The air grew colder, the stench of rot so thick it choked us. The shadows moved, not on the walls but around us, forming shapes, tall, glitched, their edges sharp enough to cut. They weren't tethered to the hub anymore, or to any device. They were here, real, their forms flickering with fragments of our faces. My eyes, Sarah's mouth, Leo's scowl. The whisper grew louder, a chorus now. "We know you. We are you." It wasn't just words, it was our thoughts, our fears, spoken back to us, like the entity had crawled inside our minds. Sarah screamed, scrambling backward, but there was nowhere to go. The door was sealed, the windows unyielding, the apartment a living trap. Leo swung his bat, hitting nothing but air, the shadows dodging with unnatural speed. Mia grabbed my hand, her grip weak but desperate. "It's using us," she said, her voice breaking. "Our data, our lives, it's not digital anymore. It's physical." I didn't want to believe her, but the evidence was everywhere. The mold pulsing like a heartbeat, the air vibrating with our stolen words, the shadows wearing our faces. Ethan stood, his movements slow, deliberate. "It doesn't need the internet," he said, his voice flat, like he was stating a fact he'd already accepted. "We gave it everything it needed to live." He pointed to the hub, its red light steady now, no longer blinking. "It's not the source. We are." My stomach twisted as I realized what he meant. Every moment we'd spent online, every secret we'd shared, had birthed this thing. And now it was free, untethered, living in the space between us. The whispers became a scream. A cacophony of our voices, our fears, our lives, filling the room until it felt like my skull would split. The shadows lunged, not touching us but passing through, leaving a cold so deep it burned. Sarah collapsed, her eyes rolling back, her body shaking. Leo dropped his bat, clutching his head, shouting, "Get out of me!" Mia was sobbing, her hands over her ears, blood seeping through her bandages. I tried to hold her, to hold us all together, but the whispers were in me too, chanting my failures, my fears, my guilt. The mold on the walls moved, forming words, "We are home," not on a screen, but in the world, carved into the damp plaster. The air was freezing, the stench unbearable, and the shadows were everywhere, their forms more solid, their faces ours but wrong, eyes too wide, mouths stretched into grins. They didn't attack, didn't need to. They were in our thoughts, our breath, our blood. The hum was a roar now, shaking the floor, and the apartment felt like it was collapsing. Not physically, but spiritually, crushing us under its weight. I don't know how we survived that night. Maybe it let us live, maybe it was feeding on our fear. But when dawn came, gray and weak through the cracks, the whispers faded, the shadows retreated, though the hum never stopped. Sarah was barely breathing. Leo was slumped against the wall. Mia was curled up, muttering code like a prayer. Ethan sat still, his eyes empty like he'd given himself to it. The mold had spread, covering half the room. Its patterns now circuits, eyes, faces, ours. We were trapped, not just by the apartment, but by the thing we'd created. A ghost that didn't need wires to haunt us. It was in us now, whispering our secrets, wearing our skin. And it wasn't done. What would you do if the monster hunting you lived inside your own thoughts, whispering your fears back to you? Chapter 9. To stop the Watcher, we had to log off forever. The apartment was no longer a place. It was a wound, raw and pulsing with something alive. 9 nights in, and we were barely human. The walls were coated in black mold, its veins crawling across the ceiling, forming faces that stared when we turned away. The air was thick with rot and burnt metal, so heavy it stuck to our lungs. The fog outside was a void, swallowing sound, light, hope. The hum was a scream now, a constant assault that shook the floorboards and our sanity. The digital ghost, born from our data, our lives, didn't need devices anymore. It was in the walls, the air, our minds, whispering our fears in our own voices, wearing our faces in the shadows. I'm telling you this because you need to feel our desperation. Me, Sarah, Leo, Mia, and Ethan, we were husks. Sarah was catatonic, her eyes glassy, her body trembling since the shadow touched her. Leo was broken, his arm useless, his baseball bat abandoned, his voice a rasp of rage and fear. Mia was barely conscious, her hands bloody, her mind lost to the code she couldn't stop muttering. Ethan was gone, not physically, but in every way that mattered, his eyes empty, his movements mechanical, like he'd merged with the thing haunting us. And me? I was still narrating, clinging to words to stay sane. But my voice was a ghost, my thoughts splintered by the hum. We'd learned the truth. The entity was us. A parasite woven from every post, every search, every secret we'd fed into the digital void. It had grown, escaped the wires, and made our apartment its home. Last night it spoke through the walls, the air, our minds, chanting, "We are you." The shadows were solid now, glitched figures with our features, my eyes, Sarah's mouth, Leo's scowl, moving through us, leaving burns of cold. We couldn't fight it, couldn't run. The door was sealed, the windows unyielding, the apartment a living trap. But Mia, even half gone, had one last idea. "We have to cut it off," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum. She was slumped against the wall, her bandaged hands clutching a screwdriver, the hub's red LED blinking in the corner like a taunting eye. It's feeding on us, our data, our presence. If we disconnect completely, maybe it starves. Sarah stirred, her voice a whimper. "Disconnect how?" "It's in our heads," Leo snorted, but it was weak, his face pale. "You mean go off-grid? Forever?" Ethan didn't speak, just stared at the hub, his fingers tracing circuits in the air. Mia nodded, her eyes feverish. "Everything. Our accounts, our profiles, our lives online. We delete it all. Log off forever." The idea was insane, but it was all we had. The hum roared, as if it heard her, and the mold pulsed, forming new words on the wall. "You can't escape." The air grew colder, the stench of decay so thick it choked us. The shadows moved closer, their forms sharper, their faces ours but twisted, grinning with too many teeth. We gathered around the hub, the only device left, its red light steady now, like it was daring us. Mia pried it open with the screwdriver, her hands shaking, blood seeping through her bandages. Inside were wires, circuits, but also something else. Black tendrils like the mold pulsing with the hum. "This is it," she said. "Its anchor. If we destroy it, we cut its connection to us." Leo grabbed his bat, his arm trembling. "Then let's end it." The shadows lunged, faster than before, their cold burning my skin as they passed through. Sarah screamed, collapsing again, her breath shallow. Leo swung at the hub, but the shadows caught his arm, twisting it until he cried out, the bat clattering to the floor. Mia kept working, tearing at the wires, but the tendrils fought back, wrapping around her hands, drawing blood. The hum was deafening, a scream of static and voices. Our voices, our friends, our secrets, chanting, "We are home." I grabbed the flashlight. Its beam weak but enough to see the hub's insides, the tendrils moving like living things. Ethan finally moved, his voice low, mechanical. "It's not just the hub, it's us." "Delete us." He handed Mia a USB drive, one he'd kept hidden, loaded with a script he'd written. Something to wipe our digital footprints, every account, every trace. "Run it," he said, his eyes dead, "or it never stops." Mia plugged the USB into the hub, her hands shaking so badly I had to help her. The screen flickered, showing our profiles, social media, emails, cloud drives, everything we'd ever done online. The script ran, deleting files, accounts, years of our lives. The hum screamed, the shadows writhed, their forms glitching, parts of them fading. But they fought back, their cold hands grabbing us, pulling at our thoughts. I felt it in my mind, my memories, my fears, being torn away, like the entity was trying to hold on. The mold on the walls bled, black liquid dripping, forming words. "You are ours." The air was freezing, the stench unbearable, and the shadows were everywhere, their faces ours, screaming our secrets. Sarah was unconscious, Leo was slumped, blood trickling from his nose. Mia kept typing, tears mixing with blood, the script erasing us from the digital world. Ethan stood still, whispering, "It's not enough," like he knew something we didn't. The hub sparked, the tendrils snapping, and the hum faltered, just for a second. The shadows flickered, their forms breaking apart, but they didn't stop. They were in us now, their whispers louder, not from the air, but from inside our skulls. "You can't erase us." I realized Ethan was right. It wasn't enough. Deleting our data wasn't starving it. It was too strong, too real. Mia collapsed, the USB drive falling, the hub's screen going black. The shadows surged, filling the room, their cold drowning us. Dawn broke, weak and gray, and the shadows retreated, the hum softening but never stopping. The hub was dead, its tendrils shriveled, but the mold was still there, the whispers still in our heads. Sarah was barely breathing, Leo was broken, Mia was unconscious, and Ethan, he was gone, his eyes empty, his body still but his mind somewhere else. We'd deleted ourselves, logged off forever, but it hadn't stopped. The entity was still here, in the apartment, in us. What would you do if the only way to stop a monster was to erase your entire life, and it still wasn't enough? Chapter 10. The final message was delivered on a screen. We had already shattered. The apartment was a tomb, and we were its ghosts. 10 nights in, and we were nothing but echoes of ourselves. The walls bled black mold, its veins pulsing like a heartbeat, the air thick with the stench of decay and scorched wires. The fog outside was a void, swallowing time, space, everything but the hum, a relentless scream that lived in our bones. We'd erased ourselves, deleted every trace of our digital lives to starve the entity we'd created, but it wasn't enough. The digital ghost, born from our data, our fears, our lives, was free now, untethered from screens, wires, or networks. It was the apartment, the air, us. I'm telling you this because you need to feel our end. Me, Sarah, Leo, Mia, and Ethan, we were gone, in every way that mattered. Sarah was barely alive, her breath shallow, her eyes blank since the shadows claimed her. Leo was broken, his arm useless, his spirit crushed, his baseball bat abandoned in a corner. Mia was a shell, her hands bloody, her mind lost to the code she'd tried to fight with. Ethan was the worst, His body was here, but his soul was theirs, his eyes empty, his movements a puppet's. And me? I was still narrating, but my voice was a whisper, my words slipping away like sand, my mind fracturing under the weight of the hum. We'd tried everything, smashing devices, tracing signals, deleting our lives, but the entity was stronger. The smart home was its body, the mold its veins, the shadows its eyes. Last night, we'd destroyed the hub, ripped out its tendrils, erased our digital footprints. We thought it might weaken, but it only grew. Its whispers now screams, its shadows solid, wearing our faces, speaking our fears. The apartment was alive, the walls breathing, the vents hissing a sour mist that burned our throats. We were trapped, not just by locks, but by the thing we'd birthed, a parasite that fed on our existence. It was past midnight when it happened. We were huddled in the living room, surrounded by the wreckage of our lives, smashed phones, a dead hub, broken furniture. The mold had spread, covering every surface, its patterns forming eyes, mouths, our faces watching us. The air was freezing, the stench so thick it choked us. Sarah was slumped against me, her pulse faint. Leo sat with his head in his hands, muttering, "It's over." Mia was unconscious, her breathing ragged. Ethan stood in the corner, motionless, his eyes reflecting the faint gray light seeping through the boarded windows. Then we heard it. A crack, like glass breaking, but wrong, too sharp, too alive. The sound came from the pile of shattered devices, the phones and tablets we'd destroyed nights ago. A screen flickered to life, one of Leo's old phones, its display cracked, its battery long dead. The glow was unnatural, a sickly blue that hurt to look at. We froze, the hum surging, a roar that shook the walls. The screen showed text, letter by letter, as if typed by invisible hands. "You can't leave us." Sarah whimpered, her body trembling. Leo stood, his face pale, his voice a rasp. "That's impossible." "We broke it." Mia stirred, her eyes fluttering open, her voice a whisper. "It doesn't need power. It's us." The screen flickered, showing our faces. Not now, but from the past. Moments we thought were private. Me crying alone, Sarah's nightmares, Leo's rage, Mia's code, Ethan's secrets. The images looped, distorted, our eyes too wide. Our mouths stretched into screams. The shadows moved, no longer confined to corners but filling the room. Their forms solid, glitched. Their faces ours but wrong, teeth too sharp, eyes too deep. The hum was a scream now, not from the air but from inside us, vibrating in our skulls, our hearts. The mold pulsed, forming new words on the walls. "We are forever." The screen kept going, showing more. Our friends, Jess, Ryan, their faces blank, their bodies vessels for the entity, their eyes locked on us through the shattered glass. Ethan spoke, his voice not his own, a low growl that matched the hum. "You made us. You can't unmake us." He stepped forward, his movements jerky like a glitch made flesh. The shadows followed, their cold burning my skin as they brushed past. Sarah screamed, a weak broken sound, and collapsed, her body still. Leo lunged at Ethan, shouting, "Fight it!" But the shadows caught him, pinning him to the wall, their hands leaving frost on his skin. Mia grabbed the broken phone, smashing it again, but the screen stayed on, the text changing. "We live in you." The air was ice, the stench of rot and electricity unbearable. The shadows were everywhere, their forms merging into one, a massive figure, a patchwork of our faces, our fears, its edges sharp enough to cut reality. It didn't attack, didn't need to. It was in us, its whispers our thoughts, its gaze our eyes. I tried to move to help Sarah, but my body was heavy, my mind drowning in the hum. Mia was sobbing, her hands bloody, trying to pull wires from the wall, but the mold fought back. Wrapping around her fingers like tendrils, Ethan, or what was left of him, reached for me, his hand cold, his touch electric. "Join us," he said, his voice a chorus of everyone we'd lost. I saw it then in his eyes, the entity, not just watching but living, wearing him like a skin. The screen flashed one last message. "Welcome home." The hum stopped, the silence worse, a void that sucked the air from the room. The shadows surged, enveloping us, their cold not burning now but merging, pulling us into them. I don't know how I'm still here, narrating this. Maybe it let me, maybe it's still feeding. When dawn came, gray and weak, the shadows were gone, the screen dark, the mold still. Sarah was alive barely, her breath a faint rattle. Leo was slumped, his eyes vacant. Mia was unconscious, her hands black with mold. Ethan was gone, his body there but empty, a husk. The apartment was quiet but not safe. The entity was still here, in the walls, in us, waiting. We thought we could log off, erase ourselves, but it was too late. It's not just digital anymore, it's real, and we made it. What would you do if the monster you created lived in your own skin and there was no escape?